Okay, Papa, we are live.
Hi, hello and welcome to CPIM's Facebook Live. Today we have with us eminent journalist P. Sainath. Sainath is the founder editor of PARI, the People's Archive of Rural India, and has been covering rural and agricultural issues for the last 30 years. Sainath is going to today talk on the farmers' agitation and the farm laws. Over to you, Sainath.
Thank you very much, Papa. I understand that this audience has had two talks about the laws already. So I'm going to go about this in a different way. I'll refer to them. I'm going to talk about some of them, but the larger connections and politics with it. I'd like to share with you that I was at Singhu a few days ago, and it was very moving. Particularly, one thing caught my eye, struck me very powerfully. I was on there. Some of you who've been there know there's a main stage. So I was a speaker from that main stage, and it was packed for I don't know how far behind. But in the main enclosure, there was a very big contingent, not less than 30 people. There was a solid contingent of decorated army veterans. Okay? Blazers, regimental blazer, bemedaled, some of them quite old, some of them, well, in their 60s, a few much older than that too. And it really moved me at a time when all this rubbish and propaganda about terrorists and Khalistanis and that kind of stuff was going on. Here were these war heroes. Here were these decorated people decorated for military service to their country. As I was leaving, a couple of them spoke to me at the gate after we finished with the media room, the media center. And they were extremely anxious. And they were worried. One was saying, I'm an army man. My son is serving now. What do you think is going to happen? Why are they not listening to us? Why are they so, adamant in when what we are asking for is something that fundamentally affects our lives? Now, I need to tell you something more about this, why my own connection with it was. In the last 20 years of speaking at countless institutions on the agrarian crisis, I also spoke at a number of institutions connected with the state, academia, universities, government officers, batches of government officers, armed forces, different institutions. I was speaking about the larger agrarian crisis. I mean, the pandemic is only this year, and this agitation is this year. But one thing struck me every time I spoke at some of these institutions, that of all the institutions of the Indian state, and you can include the media in that, the armed forces, particularly army men, particularly army personnel, were the most sensitive to the agrarian crisis. They were the most sensitive. The number of questions I would be asked about farmers' suicides in Maharashtra and Andhra from people who may not have visited those states ever. There's a reason for that sensitivity. Your Jawan is a Kisan in uniform, particularly the army. It may not be so true of the Air Force or the Navy, but particularly with the army, your Jawan is a Kisan in uniform. That Jawan is going to be very, very sensitive to what happens in the villages, to what happens to land, to farmers, what happens to his community or her community. The Jawan is a Kisan in uniform. You cannot undermine the one without undermining the other. And you undermine both at the nation's peril, at everybody's peril. I just felt the need to share this with you, that how much of the how much that Jawan is essentially a Kisan in uniform. And the retired army officers sitting there in a contingent were all also farmers. Okay, I'm sure of that. At least that was the impression I got from the only two of them who we managed to speak to it in that crowd. The next thing I want to tell you is that the fight for the repeal of these three laws is extremely important, and I don't need to tell this audience that. But I want to tag on something and emphasize something. Their repeal does not end the agrarian crisis. It simply takes us back to where it's a great thing. It staunches the bleeding. It pulls back from another milestone on the highway to agrarian hell. But it simply means that we go back to where we were, which is not a nice place. So that is something that I wanted to talk to you about. I don't want to repeat too much about the laws, but I do want to talk about the government's strategy in dealing with this agitation. I will come to the laws. I will speak something about them specifically. Or maybe I should say take one aspect of those laws to explain why they affect every single citizen of India, not just farmers, not just Punjab. These laws, especially the APMC one and the one related to contracts, they absolutely demolish the citizen's right to legal recourse. In fact, they undermine Article 32 of the Constitution. And I'm going to make a connection to what has happened outside these laws in Karnataka. But in these laws, you'll find in Section 19 of one and Section 13 and 14 of the other, it says no suit, no prosecution shall lie against the central government or the state government or any officer of the central government or any officer of the state government or any other persons. Who are those other persons? Or any other persons who have in good faith done or are intending to do something under this act. Okay. Now, those other persons here is clearly corporations. It means that whatever it creates a mechanism at the bottom saying sub-appellate authority, subdivisional appellate authority. It means collectors, deputy collectors are going to settle this, and no court has jurisdiction. Okay. So what it actually means is you're also converting the executive into the judiciary. A very low-level executive is gaining the power of judicial powers, and just expect them to set panels which will go against corporate power. That's crazy. That's ridiculous. Now, the other thing that you should know is that this kind of exclusion, it doesn't just affect farmers. You cannot, as a political party or as an NGO or as a PIL, non-profit PIL person, you cannot also exercise any legal action against corporate power, because it is excluded. Your right to do that is excluded from this law. Now, even worse versions of this law, even worse versions of this clause are there in what I've got hold of as the draft of Karnataka's anti-cow slaughter bill. I think they're going to try pushing it through as an ordinance, right? So you have Let me read you the clause. Two clauses. 1, 17. Protection of persons acting in good faith. No suit, prosecution, or other legal proceedings shall be instituted against the competent authority or any person exercising under this act for anything which in good faith is done or intended to be done under this act. Not only do you have immunity for what you have done, you have immunity for something you have not done yet, for crimes you are yet to commit. But the more important addition in this act, you're going to see these clauses in every law from now on, okay? All laws which seek to discipline labor and peasantry. This is the single most important clause that I'm reading to you, number 16. It goes along with the previous clause. And the clause itself in bold says, persons exercising power under this act are deemed to be, it's called protection of persons exercising powers under this act. Protection of persons exercising power under this act. And it reads, persons exercising power under this act are deemed to be public servants within the meaning of section 21 of the Indian Penal Code 1860. Now, any vigilante dragging people out of their house, lynching them, killing them, burning their homes, destroying livelihoods, whatever it is, they are persons exercising power under this act. They are deemed to be public servants. And remember, no suit or prosecution. In fact, the clause specifically says, for the protection of persons exercising power under this act. That sounds like an all-encompassing immunity for Bajrang Dal and VHP. I really find this scary. I don't know about you guys. I find this terribly, terribly scary. You already saw the kind of things that came in the labor ordinances. Yeah, this country became the first to set the gold standard of labor laws behind by 100 years in saying that in the ordinances that came in UP, Gujarat, in saying that you can be made to work 12 hours. And the BJP ruled states added the rider that those extra 4 hours, you're not entitled to overtime. Okay? You're not entitled to overtime. You will be paid pro rata. What you were paid per hour for the first 8 hours is what you'll be paid per hour for the next 4. Third, you're going to see this in labor laws. You're going to see this in farming laws. You're going to see this across the board as they dismantled one of the most important fundamental rights of the Indian Constitution, Article 32, which guarantees right to legal remedies. Now, coming back to the farm law. So it's not just farmers who are affected. Every single citizen is being affected. It's not a creeping conspiracy. It's a galloping conspiracy. They're going to put this in. Just imagine when you say anyone acting under this act, anyone exercising power under this act is deemed to be a public servant. It's just phenomenal. Now, what has happened at Singhu, at Tikri, at 3 other points? All of you, I mean, an audience of so many progressives knows, probably are getting blow-by-blow accounts on their WhatsApp of what's going on. But what is the government's response and strategy in this? There are, I think, five strands to the government's response. 5 strands. The third is the one to me, maybe as my prejudice as a media person, whatever, the third is the most important. The first of these strands is the Prime Minister's persona and personal intervention. The Prime Minister Modi in Varanasi, in Madhya Pradesh, has been extremely aggressive. Okay? He is playing and speaking to his base, to his party's base. He's extremely aggressive, lashing out at the opposition, seeing Congress conspiracies, the whole works. That's one strand. So the PM, in fact, the Madhya Pradesh speech had as much about the Grand Temple and things like that at Ayodhya as it did about actual farming. But that is the PM's strand of strategy, be on the aggressive. In Delhi, the ministers write letters, open letters to the farmers, appear every night on television saying we are appealing to them. Two of them visit the farmers occasionally to say, we are listening to you. You know, you've made 15 points of criticism in your letter to us, in your discussions with us. We are willing to make amendments on 12 of those. And the third, they're asking the farmers to be reasonable and saying, we are consulting you. We're willing to listen to anything you say. The third is connected to the second, but this is the most important part of the propaganda war being fought against the farmers. On this front, the BJP government is on an all-out offensive. Think tanks, newspapers, TV channels, online portals, radio, social media. It's all about, and that's why these two guys keep going and meeting the farmers and coming back. Whether on the think tanks, the TV channels, the newspapers, it's all about how good and reasonable the government is being, how good these laws are for you, how stubbornly unreasonable the farmers are. This is something that troubles me greatly. Progressives do not give enough attention to this aspect. We need to approach, study, analyze the media as corporations. Forget earlier definitions of media. You need to understand, approach them as corporations. They're not some independent purveyors of information with a few political allegiances and a few individual practices. They are corporations. I'm going to digress a little bit on this third point and come back to it, because I've been saying this for 10 years. And in fact, the last time I made a public thing on it in Comrade Govind Pansare's memorial soon after he was murdered. India today is ruled, and has been ruled for a while, by an alliance of socio-religious fundamentalists and economic market fundamentalists. And there are many who are in both camps, right? There are many who are good Hindu fundamentalists and good market fundamentalists. So there is an overlap. But this alliance has been there even earlier. The market fundamentalists have been, and I use that word deliberately, consciously. Market worship is as much a religious fundamentalism. It's got its own, popes and Shankaracharyas and televangelists every night on every channel. The market fundamentalists, the same guys, work very happily, perhaps more happily, with the UPA Congress governments as well. And they were always, the frontline, the Waffen SS, the frontline stormtroopers of these kind of policies. You're looking, the same neoliberals who were pro that government have been defending the actions of this government, whether it's a Surjit Balla or whoever it is. Note that it is always the neoliberals at the forefront of the attack on the farmers. Your the fourth aspect of the government, I said there were 5 strands, and I spent a little time on 3, which I will come back to. Fourth strand of the strategy is to divide now the agitation on the basis of on the basis of region and political group leadership. Okay. So the panel, take for example, soon after the Supreme Court said government should have a panel, and the government should have a panel and named me as well as a suggestion for that panel. Immediately the government started floating names. It's just astonishing. I don't want to say anything that divides farmers, and I won't. But it's astonishing the kind of people the government wanted on that panel. Yeah. And arbitrary selection of some people the government believes will push its line. So they're leaving out the biggest group in Punjab, the biggest farmers group, the Agraha at that time. They were, I mean, when they were leaving it out, it's I don't know whether they're now willing to bring it on. But this was the game. Haryana is different. Qatar, as you see, is now frothing at the mouth. And because this can backfire, this attempt to divide on region and stuff is totally ignorant of what kind of feeling and passion there is on the ground. Qatar's ultra zealous attack might lead to the fall of his government. I'm not saying it will happen, but I'm saying that possibility exists because a heck of a lot of Haryana farmers feel the same way as their fellows in Punjab do. That's a possible consequence of the game the government of India and the BJP are playing. So divide them on the basis of state, region, and political group leadership. And the fifth strand is the most cynical, the most deadly, not in terms of the propaganda, but you can actually hear the trolls saying it. अरे बैठने दो वहां, हाँ, COVID सबको सुधरेगा. COVID will sort them out. Okay? This is the unspoken propaganda, that unspoken strand of strategy. It's very important to know why the government passed these laws at this time. It's not just the farm laws. It's also the laws relating to labor. When everybody was walked out, eight MPs were thrown out, then there was a walkout. They also rushed through the labor codes without any resistance. There's a reason why the government chose this time. Consider, Mr. Modi had a very sizable majority before the pandemic and returned with an even bigger majority before the pandemic. He had a very sizable majority since April 2019. He will have a very sizable majority in parliament, maybe for a couple of years after the pandemic passes. Okay? So he had this majority always on both sides of this problem, but he chose the height of the pandemic to bring in the ordinances, the laws on farming, on essential commodities, the whole works. He chose to do that at the height of the pandemic. This, my friends, was the calculation that the workers and farmers are too pulverized and paralyzed by the pandemic, too cowed down by COVID. घर में बैठे हैं सब डर में. They will not be able to get their act together. They will not be able to organize and hit back at us. This is the time to push those laws. The farmers of Punjab and Haryana and those of many other states who are joining them called their bluff. The farmers of Punjab were the first to do it, and it should be recognized as such. They called that bluff. Even at the risk of COVID, pandemic, everything, they have stuck it out there. Okay. It's not 65,000 as your Delhi police tell you. That may be on one of the 5 points. There are lakhs of people out there. Singo, where I went, I walked five odd kilometers down that highway, I think. Well, 3 to 4 at least. And we were told it was backed up for another 12, 13 kilometers. Human beings, tractors. And what were they met with? They were met with border security force, barbed wire, trenches dug by governments. Where is that law on punishing people for damaging public property? 10-foot by 10-foot trenches, water cannons. 70 years old people being hit by water cannon in what is said to be one of Delhi's worst winters in the last 70 years. But they stuck it through. That calculation of Mr. Modi and Mr. Shah backfired terribly. People were willing to take that risk. If you talk to them, they'll tell you that it's either this or our lives anyway. So they're there. And yes, I think that the kind of situation with so many tens of thousands or even lakhs of people packed together is a bit scary. It is. But don't look at, there are, I can see tweets, who asked them to stay there? Let them go home. They won't have any danger. Who forced them to be there? Who forced them to have to assert their rights and make a protest under the circumstances of pandemic and COVID? Those are the people responsible for anything that goes wrong here. Yeah. So this attitude of wearing them out, let them eat cake is now let them eat COVID. These are the 5 strands. These are the 5 strands of the government, its strategy. There is also the question of how this fits into the larger agenda and framework of the BJP government. Do not isolate these 3 laws from the rest of the agrarian crisis, from the rest of it. Oh, incidentally, on the strategies, while the PM went on about Ram Temple and farming in Madhya Pradesh or Varanasi or wherever he made those speeches, one of the fun things of this whole agitation and the propaganda drive against it is that the country actually got to know that we have an agriculture minister. And some people at least know the name Narendra Tomar now. It is the farmers' agitation that made it clear, that brought out the fact that we actually have an agriculture minister who writes these 8-page letters in Hindi. It comes to about 4 pages in English. And the stuff in that letter, respond to 3, don't respond to this because it's pointless. It's about people infiltrating this movement who are, Chinese agents in 62, all this kind of stuff. I don't think we should even give it the dignity of an answer because nobody is listening to Mr. Narendra Tomar, least of all the farmers. The third strand, which I spoke about, the all-out propaganda offensive, the all-out war against the the all-out propaganda war against the farmers and anyone who supports them. That strand is especially important in many ways. Look at the Ashok Gulatis, the Surjit Bhallas. Surjit Bhalla is an economist who, by the late 90s, was declaring there was no poverty in India. Okay, that's the guy. Now, he is an IMF director of this country, writing articles in the newspapers because all hands are now on deck for the government's ship. It's not. I don't know if there is if it's a breach of propriety. He is the India representative in the IMF. Here he is writing abusing the farmers. Socialism for the rich farmers, because Mr. Balla believes only in socialism for India's billionaires. I need you, I really appeal to all of you. I didn't want to repeat what others had said in previous meetings. I'm appealing to all of you to take this third strand seriously, because these think tank guys, the touts of Delhi's think tanks, these experts, the IMF bank gang, all of them are paraded in the media before the public as media certified experts, and this is where the confusion of the middle classes begins. Now look, Amitabh Kant, now famous for his statement, India is too much of a democracy. You can't really push through reforms without that. I mean, when you're having that democracy. Shekhar Gupta, one of the senior most editors of India and one of the most well-known, very early during the pandemic was urging this kind of action. He you can see him online in the print where he says, never waste a good crisis. What does that mean? It means these guys are now on their knees with this pandemic and COVID and all the other problems that you can think of. He doesn't say that, but he says, never waste a good crisis. This is an opportunity to push ahead with the reforms. Who knows where maybe the government took heart from that idea. Later, he says something else where he also says, I'm summarizing it as using the words of another journalist who tweeted the second piece. The first thing I told you, that's verbatim. Never waste a good crisis. The second thing is more or less the content says, sometimes you have to be cruel to be kind. Now, Swaminathan Iyer, in his Swami Namaks column, goes one further. The headline tells you, you need an iron fist in a velvet glove. Yeah? You got to be cruel to be kind, but you got to deceive people into thinking you're kind. So use an iron fist in a velvet glove. This phenomenal demonization of farmers, the agitation. There are 5-6 strands in this which are repeated every time. All of you must be facing them. Let me give you my take on them. One is the demonetization of today in the Janta Parliament, which has run for 3 days brilliantly with some extraordinary inputs from intellectuals and activists and political party people from across the spectrum. Even there, while speaking, I received a question from a person I know and recognize as a progressive. Because of this whole propaganda of rich farmers and things like that, people are raising the issue of why is there no tax on agricultural income in India? Firstly, by the way, farmers are taxed. Their price is set by others. There are many ways in which farmers are taxed indeed. But anyway, this idea that shouldn't we be taxing agricultural incomes above so many lakhs? Maybe you should be, but it's hardly relevant to the mass of Indian farmers, because if anyone knows what a farmer earns in this country, the last data we have, please know this about rich farmers who are at the gates of Delhi. Are there super rich farmers? Of course there are. I mean, there have always been the Sharad Pawars, the Shanta Kumars, all these people. I mean, who are they? They're rich farmers. But the farmers in protest out there, how rich are these farmers? How rich is the Indian farmer? We don't even have data for individual farmers. We have data for farm households from the 2013 national sample survey, subsequently, most data that comes out is anyway killed. The NDA, in fact, every time answering questions in Parliament or elsewhere, or RTI says no data available. In fact, one of the things going around now is NDA stands for no data available. The thing about this, the National Sample Survey 2013 tells us the average farm household in India, not individual, household. Household, 4 people to 5 people, you take your choice. The average farm household in India has a monthly income of 6,426 rupees from all sources. That is from agriculture, from cultivation, from wage labor, from anything else they do, meaning that agriculture is not even providing the full 6,426 rupees. Now, this is obviously an average of different states, like Chhattisgarh, Odisha, where it would, or Western Odisha, where it would be 3,000 or even less, and states like Punjab, Haryana, Kerala, where it would be higher. Punjab's, by the way, is 10,800 something, 10,800 rupees a month. You divide that by 4 people and you see how much you get. Yeah, or 5 people. If you divide that by 5 people, you barely get a little over 2,000 rupees per capita. Now, are those farmers? I think all of us should make it a conscious practice of using that word rich farmer very correctly in a focused and targeted way. And with the farmers that you're seeing in Delhi, I think that you should be using the word. They are not rich farmers. They are relatively less worse off. They are less worse off. Just look at the household income, average household income of a farmer in this country, or even that of Punjab, which is one of the highest in that lot. So this whole thing, this whole propaganda about in the strand 3, they're all rich farmers. Well, you've seen how rich they are. Second is, and they're all from Punjab. I want to tell you that today, at least a couple of thousand farmers from Maharashtra have left for Delhi, for Singhu and Tikri, in a jata from Nashik. Nashik, where the first spark was lit of a new phase of farmers' protest, when 40,000 of the poorest farmers, mainly Adivasi farmers, marched 182 kilometers in 38 to 40 degrees heat from Nashik to Mumbai. Please understand that this agitation, these protests that you're seeing now, are not something out of the blue. They have a history, they have a prehistory. Okay? It goes in 2018 November. All of you know, all of you in Delhi know, that farmers gathered at Parliament, near to Parliament, between 1 lakh and 2 lakhs of them, gathered at Parliament and made pretty much include a set of demands that included many of the things that the farmers of Punjab and Haryana have made since the start of this agitation. They wanted a guaranteed MSP, a guaranteed procurement. They asked for debt waiver. They asked for a special session of Parliament. All these things they did. Now, were they all from Punjab and Haryana? Not at all. They were there in 2018 November from 22 states and 4 union territories. That's as Indian as you'll get. Okay, 22 states, 4 union territories. Yeah, from Kanyakumari and from Kashmir, they were farmers, and they all support. I said today Maharashtra contingent has left. 23rd, an equally large contingent is leaving from Andhra Pradesh. People are coming in from Karnataka. Know this, that they may not reach Delhi because the fortress BJP fortress of Madhya Pradesh is there to stop them from reaching Delhi. But they are determined to reach their comrades in Delhi, in Singhu, in Tikri, in solidarity. Second, the media can't tell you. People ask me, how is it you're telling me about all those other protests? It doesn't appear in the media. Oh man, give me a break. You're expecting when the biggest beneficiaries of these laws are the biggest owners and advertisers of media, in what sane state of mind does anyone expect that the media are going to be fair, balanced, accurate, or all those other hypocritical cliches that they mouth to us all the time? The richest man in this country is Mukesh Ambani. The richest Mukesh Ambani he's also the fourth richest man in the world. He is the richest and by far the biggest media owner in this country, with a minimum of 18 channels, TV channels under his belt, perhaps more that I don't know of. Now, when he is also going to be one of the biggest beneficiaries of these laws, to the extent that every farmer in that agitation understands it, and they are saying, in the slogans are Adani, Ambani, they specifically pick these names. One of the very nice posters going around on the internet makes a lot of sense to me. It says, farmers, don't talk to middlemen. Talk directly to Ambani and Adani. Farmers, don't talk to middlemen, the Modis or the Shahs. Talk direct, because that poster writer and the farmers have recognized a fundamental truth that I hope all progressives will recognize, and that I hope progressives will make others recognize. The giant battle of our time is against corporate power, naked corporate power. Okay? You look at the outstandings of these guys in their bank loans to public sector banks, of course. Have a look at it. Here are people. I mean, these laws are written for them, by them, of them. And it's not just a political party idea. Okay, it's not just a political party idea. It's a corporate consolidation. Let me show you how much of a consolidation it is, because the law, the APMC law that you have now, is the antithesis of what Mr. Modi took as a position as early as 2011. Those of you who want some entertainment on that, go to the Consumer Affairs Ministry, please. Go to the Consumer Affairs Ministry on the website and look for the report of the Consumer Affairs Group, the National Consumer Affairs Group. It was chaired by one Chief Minister, Narendra Modi. The section 3B states categorically, that no transaction, no agricultural transaction should be allowed between farmer, trader, anything. No agricultural transaction should be allowed in this country below MSP, below the rate of the MSP. They even wanted that report, even the people on that report even wanted fast courts to be able to deal, special courts, sorry, to deal with the kind of stuff that, the farmers' grievances fast. Here, now Mr. Modi is taking away the right of the farmers to go to courts, taking away the rights of all citizens to go to courts, who were saying we need special courts in 2011. And by the way, if you get onto the net, the report, by the way, on the Consumer Ministry's website does not give you the names also of all the members. But if you go to that period and click on do your search on the net, you'll find many photographs of Mr. Modi handing over the report to Dr. Manmohan Singh with a very benign, benevolent Pranab Da in the background in some of them. So Mr. Modi changed that position completely. The second thing that we need to really make people understand how completely unacceptable any promise or assurance from these people is, unless it is coded in law, passed in a democratic fashion, and not by throwing out all those MPs who make the difference in the voting. In 2014, tens of millions of farmers voted for Mr. Narendra Modi. And one of the key statements, one of the key promises that he made, within 12 months of coming to power, we will implement the main recommendation of the Swaminathan Commission. The main 12 months. What he did in 2015, within 12 months, was to have his government file affidavits in the court saying this cannot be done. What was that recommendation? Cost of production, C2 plus 50%. Comprehensive cost of production, which is what the Swaminathan Commission suggested. Second, in the affidavit, he said this cannot be done. Having promised and got the votes of millions of farmers, he said this cannot be done. It would distort the market. The lives of millions of India's farmers being devastated, that doesn't matter. You can't distort the market. That is 2015. 2016, Mr. Radha Mohan Singh, another unknown person who was the agriculture minister, he made this wonderful statement. ऐसा हमने कभी ऐसा एक वादा नहीं किया. We never made such a promise. 2017, all these same think tank gangs, all these experts of the ruling class were saying, Swaminathan is passe. Why don't you look at what's going on in Madhya Pradesh under the dynamic rule of Shivraj Chauhan? Our Madhya Pradesh model, which by the way was subsidizing traders, not farmers, our Madhya Pradesh model is, such a wonderful thing, and that is the way to go. And it was not much long after that Madhya Pradesh model included the shooting dead of 5 farmers at Mandsaur. But anyway, 2018 budget speech of Mr. Arun Jaitley, who is a classic example of someone, who was both a market fundamentalist and a socio-religious fundamentalist. Mr. Jaitley, in his budget speech, I give you the paragraph 13 and 14, said, we have already implemented that recommendation. We've done it in the Rabi crop. We'll do it in the Kharif as well. The game played here was, what is cost of production? You've already heard people much more competent than me tell you about that. There is A2, which is just input costs. A2 plus FL, which is input cost plus imputed cost of family labor. And there is the comprehensive cost, which includes rental value of land, taking that into note, etc., which is what Swaminathan did. These guys just went about A2 plus FL in most cases, never went beyond that. And the difference, by the way, of a quintal of wheat between A2 plus FL and the Swaminathan C2 could be as high as 400 rupees a quintal to 500 rupees a quintal. Okay? So this was the game. And he declared we've already implemented it. 2018, in the run-up to the 2019 elections, Mr. Nitin Gadkari said the most honest thing that anyone had said so far from the BJP. He said, "Arey yaar, चुनाव के पहले हर आदमी वादा करते हैं ना, हर पार्टी करे, har paksh karenge na. He said at the time of elections, every party, every person makes promises. In other words, why the hell are you holding us to that nonsense? And now Mr. Modi is saying, we were the first to implement the Swaminathan Commission. I need you to understand in the context of the larger agrarian crisis that both UPA and NDA have competed with each other to bury the Swaminathan Commission report. If there is one English word or phrase that farmers in this country know, from Manipur to, Chennai to Punjab to Kashmir, they know the word Swaminathan report. They have great faith in it. They asked for that. They demonstrated peacefully for a decade, demanding its culminating in the 2018 March. Now, the court says, let's have a panel to look at the whole problem of Delhi. I'm saying you can't separate these. Is there any panel or expert on agriculture more competent than the Swaminathan Commission report? So these are this is the track record of this government and of these governments. The BJP has gone, as always, the BJP is kind of UPA on steroids. What the Congress did, it will do much more ferociously. In fact, Mr. Arun Shourie, veteran journalist and former BJP minister, he described the BJP very well about a year ago. He said BJP is Congress plus cow, scaled up many times. So you've had, I suggested in my response to the court's suggestion that why don't you suggest that the government constitute a panel, hold a special session of parliament to discuss the agrarian crisis and related issues. You cannot start unless you repeal these laws. Set up that committee, have that parliament session, and introduce a new practice in Indian parliamentary democracy. Many other democracies have it. Public hearings on the floor of parliament. Let the victims of the agrarian crisis stand on the floor of parliament and tell the nation what the crisis means to them, not to Ashok Gulati or Surjit Balla. Let the victims of the agrarian crisis speak to this nation, because the media don't let them speak. The media don't let their voices be heard. So all this stuff about another new line, old line, we are not killing the APMCs. We are not doing away with the MSP. We are not doing away with the mandis. You don't have to. Yeah, of course. It's not, it's as if as if critics are floating an idea of lynch mobs going around burning and razing the APMCs and mandis. That's not how it's going to happen. You are going to make them unsustainable. You're going to create an unregulated trade outside where where many traders will defect, no tax, no this thing, totally unregulated. That's what your game is, right? So you're going to make sure that the APMCs die. Now, about the demonization of the APMC itself, I'm sure the two speakers before me have told you a lot about that. I want you to know that in communicating with the middle classes, how do we make people understand what is an APMC politically? What is an APMC socially? I've been saying this 1,000 times. Forgive me for repeating myself. Is the APMC a Shangri-La, a heaven? No, it's not. It's farmers who have desperately called for reforms of APMCs for a very long time. But reforms in whose direction? Pro-corporate reforms or pro-farmer reforms? That's the question. The APMCs are inadequate. They're bad in many ways. They're problematic. But they are so desperately important for tens of millions of farmers. And don't believe all this nonsense about only 6% access MSP. It's not true. But anyway, let me put it this way about, should we close down APMCs? Should we get rid of them? Yeah. Should we get rid of them? Let there be choice. This whole myth of capitalism's choices is something you need to strike at. But in the real world of in the real world of India today, consider from the middle class's point of view the government school or the government hospital. Government schools outside of Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and a couple of other states, they're terrible. They have no infrastructure. No, very few of them have proper toilets for girls. Many of them have no toilets at all, and some have utterly inadequate toilets, which are only for boys. At the same time, the government school is the only chance for millions of children to have anything approaching an education, and the only place where they get one decent meal every day of their lives. Hunger and malnourishment have shot up in the pandemic period. Every one of you knows that. You're reading the same newspapers I do. You're getting the same information that I do. Hunger has grown so bad. So do we, because the schools are not so good, should we shut down the schools and give them a choice? They can go to Ambani International School or Birla International School. They have a choice. This is the choice the government offers. When it speaks about consultation, look at it this way. The government school is the APMC of the education sector. The PHC and district hospital are the Mandi and APMC of the health sector. We all know they're all flawed. Should we shut down all the government schools? Should we shut down all the PHCs and district hospitals? You see how stupid that argument is. The same argument is now being made for shutting down of the APMCs by demonizing them. So this is the real game. The hunger has gone up in such a way. And just look at the figures before the pandemic. A recent paper in the journal Food Policy tells us that if rural Indians spent 100% of their income, no non-food income, no non-food items, no health, no education, nothing. If they spent 100% of their incomes on food, 63.3% of rural Indians would still not be able to afford a basically nutritious diet. If rural Indians spend even 1/3 of their income on non-food items like health, education, transport, rents, whatever, then 76%, more than 76% of rural Indians cannot afford a nutritious diet. Inequality, which to me, my mind, is the central issue of our time, and the central adversary of our time is corporate power. Inequality has gone up so badly. In the pandemic period, in the first 4-5 months, Indian billionaires, there are about 120 of them, added 35% to the wealth they already had. Now it stands at about $425 billion. If these people were even taxed 1% of this wealth, what could you do? What could you not do in the health sector to meet the crisis? Yeah. So in every respect, the lies, I think that we should not be beguiled into forgetting the larger crisis and always bearing in mind the connection between these different strands of crisis. By the way, that inequality has grown so badly, every one of you can see it in the field of education. A corporate like Baiju, a corporate online its value went from $5.5 billion to $12 billion, and most 11 to $12 billion, and most of that growth has come in the lockdown and the pandemic. If you want to know what, and the pandemic and this lockdown, the unjust class nature of this lockdown, the casteist nature of implementation of the lockdown has devastated hundreds of millions of livelihoods. If you want to know something about that, People's Archive of Rural India, of which I am the editor, has published 150 pieces on what has happened to livelihoods. 40 of these are the laws and ordinances and stuff passed under the lockdown period, and 110 are full-length multimedia features. What's happened to weavers? What's happened to potters? What's happened to tailors? What's happened to embroiderers? What's happened to honey collectors? What's happened to nomadic pastoralists? You need to know all of that. This crisis, what COVID-19 has done is to give you an incredible autopsy of the society we are. It's given you an incredible autopsy of neoliberalism. It's given you an unsparing and ugly autopsy of capitalism itself. Okay? That's where your fight lies. It's corporate power. Look at what's happened in education. I don't have the time, so I'm not going to show you the tables. But there is a NSS study as late as 2018, which shows you who can access that. 90% of rural kids are wiped out of accessing your online education. How many Adivasi or Dalit girls do you know below the age of 17 who own smartphones to be able to download all those PDFs? The data of the NSS shows us the more egalitarian a society, the better it does in, Karnataka, mother of Silicon Valley, Karnataka, shows you this, that only two, here, this is the table. Thanks, Bhuvan. I won't go into it too much, but you can see here that Kerala does better than anyone in terms of how many households have computers, how many households have access to internet, how many households have people above the age of 5 who can use computers and internet, and how many people in the last 30 days have actually used the net. There is a huge gap between Kerala and the rest of the country. But anyway, thanks, Bhuvan. You can move that off. You can have a look. I will send you these tables. We will be publishing them shortly in Pari. So in every front, inequality has grown. I think the battle is against inequality. And on the other hand, corporate profits have just, especially the online and digital guys, have just ballooned in obscene proportion. We are not just fighting for the repeal of 3 laws. And I love to say that the farmers at Singhu Tikri are aware that they are fighting a much bigger battle than the repeal of those 3 laws. They understand it, they know it, they're quite proud of it. So we are fighting corporate power. I'll end with one quote from my favorite quote from the Australian political scientist, now unfortunately dead, Alexander Carey. He described in 2005, he wrote a thesis which said, the 20th century can be understood in 3 major developments. The rise and growth of democracy, the rise and growth of corporate power, the rise and growth of corporate power, the rise and growth of democracy, the rise and growth of corporate propaganda to stifle the rise and growth of democracy. Okay? I think that's a very, very fair summing up of not only the 20th century, but the first decades of this one as well. Yeah, you are up against corporate power. The farmers there are fighting corporate power. However, if we want to make this a people's movement, I will take 1 minute more. If you want to make this a people's movement, there are 2 steps. One is to back this struggle unreservedly. 2, to bring in the demands of those other sections of farm laborers, Dalit farmers, women farmers, Adivasi farmers, landless farmers. Bring in the other issues of privatization of water, which is happening rapidly. All those other things have to come in. That's why a special session of Parliament is necessary to discuss the agrarian crisis and related issues. Immediately, there is something that every one of you can do as of tonight. Okay? The Nation for Farmers, a forum of which Dinesh Abrol, I, several others are co-conveners. We're a non-hierarchical forum. has made a call today in the Janata Parliament, which I give you. Let us everywhere, wherever you are, district, block, taluka, city, town, megapolis, let all over the country there be the formation of small committees locally. Save farmer, save nation committees. I believe left and progressives alone can launch this in 200 districts. And this is a challenge and an invitation. Your district, start a Save Farmer Committee. Basic 5 demands: repeal of the farm laws, convene a special session of parliament, debt waiver, organize boycotts of those corporations whose goods, who the farmers are fighting for their survival. Like this, if we did this, Save Farmer, Save Nation Committee, and it should be the broadest possible thing, flexible, allow people to bring in local issues to make the mobilization better. If we take this, this will be a first great step towards a fight back on the larger battles as well. Thank you.
Hi, Zainat. Thanks for the talk. We have a few questions. I'm hoping that you'll be able to take them.
Sure. Ask me 3 and you read out 3 and I'll answer those at one time.
Okay. So the first question is that you mentioned that the government has been trying to divide this movement on religious lines and on state lines.
Regional lines.
On regional
and political group leadership, yeah.
Right. And so we have heard this thing repeated on TV and on social media that these are basically rich farmers from Punjab. We have seen pictures of them eating pizza and getting foot massage. So the argument is that because the MSPs are primarily given, the MSP procurement is primarily done from Punjab, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, and these are somehow the vested interests who are protesting, and this is not the issue of all farmers.
Okay. Let me immediately answer that because there are actually 3 questions in that. Number 1, the rich farmer thing, I think I explained at some length that the average, what rich farmer are you targeting? You want to target a rich farmer, please get ready for targeting the new rich farmers who are Ambani and Adani. Target corporate farming. Yeah. Target your Shanta Kumars and Sharad Pawars and others. Your average farm household income in the Punjab is around 10,800 rupees for an entire household. Wow, how rich. I mean, really, really, how rich. Yeah. Do you know, the best answer to this kind of stuff came to me from one of the things that farmers have demanded is that we be treated on par. We be treated on par with government employees in cost of living index, in DA, and all these things. And one of the best that ever came to me when the last pay commission came and gave bureaucrats, increments with total increases of up to 40,000 rupees. I met a drunken farmer in Yavatmal. He was trying to sell me his buffalo. That buffalo was one of the buffaloes distributed by Dr. Manmohan Singh against my pleading and advice, saying, you are giving out buffaloes and cows to farmers who are not cattle breeders. Your cattle distribution will paralyze that person. It will really hurt them. Those cattle eat more than that family does. Okay, the cost of it. Maintenance of a Jersey hybrid is 400 rupees a day, 300 rupees a day. Anyway, so this guy tried to sell me his buffalo. I kept saying, yaar, मैं पत्रकार हूं, मैं क्या करूं इसको लेके, आपका भैंस लेके. He said, सुनो, ये कोई साधारण भैंस नहीं है, ये प्रधानमंत्री जी का भैंस है. So I said, sure, I'm very honored and flattered that you're wanting to sell me that. But damn it, I'm a journalist, I can't buy. Then he said, आप पत्रकार हैं? I said, yeah. निकालो notebook. So I took out my notebook. He said, please take down my demand. He said, when the next pay commission is announced, when the next finance commission, pay commission, all that stuff is announced, every bureaucrat should be given one buffalo like this. And their increments should be given to us. This is my demand. Okay. So these are your rich farmers, they own cattle, they own land. I just find this unfathomable when the figures and numbers are straight in front of our faces. They are less worse off than other farmers, the farmers of Punjab. Yeah. Now, please tell me which government run government employee household, maybe in class 4 sometimes, has an average income of 10,000 rupees a month, not even a class 4 employee, and from all sources. Okay, I don't want to dignify that anymore. The second part of that is they're all from Punjab. I think I did answer that. There was another part to that question, Bappa, which was sorry.
That this is not the issue of all farmers, because the procurement is primarily done from these few states.
Okay. By the way, it's like saying government schools are only good in Kerala and Tamil Nadu. Let's shut them down elsewhere. How does it matter? Let's shut them down elsewhere. How does it matter? Second, it's absolutely short-sighted not to see. Please know this. There was a terrific article in the Hindu a few days back by Ritika Kera, Sudha and Dr. Sudha Narayan and one more person, which showed you that 10% of what given out as MSP on rice went to poor farmers in Chhattisgarh and Odisha. Okay? And it is not true that only farmers in Punjab and Haryana access MSP. They access it on a better scale because they've been able, by their power and organized power and collective bargaining power, to make a bad system work for them. Now, the idea is that you need to reform that so that the rest of the farmers in the country can access what the Punjab and Haryana farmers have been able to do. That is what you actually need to do. Also, I have said this 15 years, MSP is meaningless if you do not have a guarantee of procurement. I am dead against any law being passed on guaranteeing high MSP without a guarantee of procurement. Governments have played this game for 50. I've seen it right through the Vidarbha crisis. Anytime more farmers die, government declares high MSP, and then they don't procure. Okay? So the idea of procurement, the availability, first and foremost, farmers cannot go. Most farmers are unable to access the MSP, unable to access the the APMC, because, my friend, in this country, the bulk of farmers have to sell at the farm gate to their sahukar, to their taragar, to their contractor, to their commission agent. They have to sell that. As you and I speak today, in Kalahandi or in Koraput, farmers are pledging the crop of 2023 to the moneylender, because the crop of 2020 was pledged 3 years ago. They are pledging the crop of 2023. They have that moneylender, the contractor, the commission agent, has the right of, or the taragar in Tamil Nadu, he has the right of first refusal over your crop. We pushed tens of millions of farmers back into the hands of sahukars by destroying agricultural credit. We destroyed agricultural credit. We converted that agricultural credit and took it towards the corporate sector. In Maharashtra, a state which is still 55% rural, NABARD's annual potential linked credit plan of 2017 allocates 53% of all agricultural credit to Mumbai. 53% of agricultural credit goes to Mumbai. There are no agriculturists in Mumbai, but there is agri-business in Mumbai. Okay, so in fact, between 1991 and 2001, the number of agricultural households in debt doubled from 26% to 48% at that time because of the withdrawal of credit, agricultural credit, as we took it out of direct credit and put it into indirect finance. Finally, we did away with the distinction in 2013 so that we can conceive who is getting the money. So the farmers need that access to MSP, and you need to break those. What you need to break is the monopoly of private trade, not that of the APMC. You need to get the MSP, and not only on rice and wheat. There are 23 crops declared under MSP. Even in Punjab, people can't access it beyond rice, wheat, and maize. Okay, so that is my answer. You need to make that MSP and guarantee procurement work for others. They are desperate to have that.
Sanath, the next question, we have talked about APMCs and MSPs and this not having recourse to courts, but there is another aspect which the farmers are strongly against, which is about contract farming. So can you shed some light on why they are so against contract farming, and have there been recent examples of implementation of contract farmings and how it affects the farmers?
Well, first of all, I think the Punjab farmers are the most competent to be enraged by it because they've experienced it for many years. Yeah, they've experienced it for many years. They've had their bouts with PepsiCo. They've had all kinds of problems. See, first, you're trying to produce a contract of unequals. What stopped the government by saying what? Okay, in this contract of unequals, let us say that Bappa is a 1.5 acre farmer from where? From Bihar or UP or wherever you are from. Bappa, where are you from?
I'm from Delhi. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Delhi has farmers. Okay. Let's say you're a 1.5. The Yamuna has many farmers even now. 7,000 of them recognized. Say you own 1.5 acres, 2 acres. You enter into a contract with me. I'm a front arm of, say, Reliance Fresh. The first thing that's going to happen, which affects the whole country, is that corporates will dictate to farmers what they will grow, which will mainly be crops for export, increasingly, because they're going to get better prices. They're going to cultivate what they will get the best prices on. The best prices they'll get is not in India. So they'll get you to do vanilla, safed museli, all the exotic stuff for which you have a zero market in India. So Bappa does whatever he's asked to. I say, Bappa, I'll give you 3 lakhs per annum. Okay, that's my contract with you. At the end of the first season, I do it. I even give you free inputs because I want you to grow my kind of tomato. In Punjab, that's what happened. Now, that tomato has no local customer. At the end of one season, 1 year, I say, Bappa, sorry, world prices have fallen. I can't give you 3 lakhs. I'm going to give you 1,40,000. Now, you can't go and sell your tomatoes anywhere. There is no market for it. You take me to the court. You know what? I don't have to bankrupt you. Your lawyer will do that. 3 hearings. It's an absolutely unequal situation, and you're asking the farmer to sign on to that contract. But secondly, for all the virtues it sings of contract, agreement, etc., I do not see anything in that law that says that a written contract is mandatory. Okay? I don't see anything in the law that says it is mandatory that the contract is written. Third, what prevented the government from saying that any contracts, the state government will be a third-party signatory? The state will be a signatory, or the center or whoever will be a signatory, so that in terms of disputes, there is an umpiring, you've got to be fighting legally the government of the state or the government of India. That would have brought some balance to it. Now, I'm saying the fourth thing, contracts in India are largely unwritten, as we know. As I've shown you, even if they are written, your power is still limited when you are so unequal, and a contract essentially recognizes the inequality as the status quo. But in India, how many 95% of tenancies, I believe, are not recorded. I mean, outside of a few states, outside of the left-ruled states of the time and now, many of these contracts are, totally unwritten. And Mr. KCR in Telangana says we have no tenant farmers in Telangana. There are no tenants. I don't recognize them. When you have totally unwritten contracts on the one hand, and you have a total disproportion of power between these two, between the contractee and the contractor, you can only have one result. You can only have one result. And combined with this, the fact that you don't have the capacity to store those tomatoes for a long period, which the Essential Commodities Act has now removed any problem of hoarding. And they can store. At the end of 2 weeks of courting and going to court, you will go back and sell your remaining crop to them at 1,40,000. Okay, that's where your contracts take you. Yeah.
Okay. I think we're running out of time. So one last question. So you mentioned that these editors like Shekhar Gupta, he's made this quote that you have to be cruel to be kind. And so kind of the premise behind that is that farming is unprofitable, that Indian farming for some reason is unproductive. Well, it's unproductive because the landholdings are very small, and these laws kind of address that issue. So what do you say to that reasoning?
Actually, I said that cruel to be kind was not a quote. It was a summary of his article by a fellow journalist who's worked with him. But the thing is, Mr. Gupta, what Mr. Gupta doesn't know about farming would fill all the libraries of this country. He recently wrote a piece, made statements and claims thoroughly demolished by Professor R. Ramakumar and others. Look how great the growth of Bihar agriculture has been after the repeal of the APMC Act there in 2006. It grew at 4% when the rest of India when Punjab was growing at 1%. Now, first of all, growth rate in a particular given area is relative to the previous year. Bihar, starting from an extremely low base, it depends on where you draw the baseline. No? You see, if we draw the if we draw the baseline in the last ice age, everybody's lives on the planet has improved. So he takes Bihar showing, but he stops at 2012 because Bihar agriculture was growing better than it had earlier, relative to those earlier years. Punjab, over a period of time, what was its growth? What was its output? All of that. So this kind of stupidity that, and then by the way, after 2012, please look at Bihar and look at its agricultural growth. You need a magnifying glass for that, but you can do it. So this is the sort of stuff, understanding on which people say that, this farming is unviable. Of course, farming is unviable. It's been rendered unviable by design. Please remember Mr. Chandrababu Naidu, and see, the liberalization period, the neoliberal period in India consisted of one, so-called freeing market forces and market prices, with the result that input costs rose 200 to 500% according to the crop. Of market-based pricing for everything, which meant that the farmer got the lowest prices. Yeah, but all other aspects, electricity, education, farmer is not just a person who does farming. He or she has a family, has children, has people to look after, feed, send to school, hospital, college, whatever. While the cost of cultivation may have risen 5 times, how many times did the farmer's income rise? And even if you double it with 2022, which you can't in your wildest dreams, it doesn't mean anything when the cost of production has gone up 5 times. With all these, we crushed the any advantage that the farmer had, any fair right that he had, we crushed that. We made it unviable, and we saw the result in the death by suicide of more than 300,000 human beings. And by the way, it was made. So I'm saying it was made unviable by design. And I'll tell you. Let me define that agrarian crisis for you in 5 words. The agrarian crisis is the corporate hijack of Indian agriculture. Corporate hijack of Indian agriculture. All the inputs are in their hands. Who controls seeds? Farmer or corporation? Who controls pesticides? Who controls fertilizer? Yeah. All those are, you are fighting. A corporate hijack of Indian agriculture is the agrarian crisis in 5 words. What is the process by which that is achieved? The process by which that is achieved is the predatory commercialization of the countryside. Not only through the explosion of prices, but through all your contract laws and APMC laws, which are making life impossible, the destruction of which will affect everyone. Please, in reference to the earlier question as well, remember that the destruction of those MSPs and APMCs affect Punjab. It will destroy the public distribution system. The FCI will be reduced to a body that collects those buffer stocks, which the government can then export, as it has been doing. Okay? So, would you say that the PDS affects only Punjab? Would you say that the PDS affects only Haryana? The third, so what is the crisis? 5 words I told you. What is the process? Predatory commercialization of the countryside. What is the consequence? Largest displacement in our history. We've already seen that in the agrarian crisis in our migrations between between 91 census and 2011 census. The number of full-time farmers, meaning those cultivating a plot 180 days or more in the year, it fell by 15 million. Okay? The farmer population plummeted. But you look at the same census abstract, primary census abstract, the agricultural workers column has doubled. It's many millions of farmers have fallen into the ranks of the agrarian underclass. All those things, let's take people out and give them other. You didn't create one frigging job. Is the farmer coming out of Mandya going to be absorbed in Infosys? Yes, possibly. In the canteen to serve milk and coffee for the techies. That's possibly the best job that she or he can get in the private sector. So the third process, the displacement, the 2011 census showed us we had seen the greatest migrations in our history. And by the way, that has plenty to do with the pandemic. Through this pandemic, when people started the reverse migration, the hypocrisy with which we all wrote about poor things, why are they going back? They should stay. I think they made the most rational decision. They knew who we were as a society. They knew what we are as the middle classes. After all, they'd lived at our beck and call 24 hours a day, many of them. And the question was wrong. Why are they leaving for their homes was the wrong question. Why did they leave their homes in the first place to come here? That was the agrarian crisis. That was the outward thrust of it. Without creating it, we just decided that 40% of people should leave agriculture without doing a damn inch of planning for what happens to them next. And I hold those planners, those economists, those frauds responsible for the hundreds of thousands of suicides and despair and debt. Okay, so that is, well, that's what I have to say in answer to that question.
Sainath, thanks for talking to us. We will continue to have you back with us to talk on rural issues, agrarian issues, and in general other people's issues. And to our viewers, thanks for joining in. We will continue to have these sessions where we bring to you the issues of the people. Do join us in our sessions. Thanks.
Thank you.